I want to wish everybody a good evening. How are you doing? It is a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm James Doggett, the pastor of Patmos Chapel, the proud owners of the Well Activity Center, and it is our privilege to welcome you here tonight. We do believe in the scriptures, and in 1 Thessalonians, the second chapter, Paul speaks to his mentee, Timothy, and tells him that what you need to do is make sure you engage in the political process. Pray for those who are in power. Make sure that you're praying for those who are in power. And we believe in getting involved in the political process here. We want to be intelligent about the things we vote on. We do believe in voting. And tonight we're thankful that there are some candidates who are willing to come out and talk to us about their vision for those they serve. I'm going to ask you, if you would now, to bow your heads for a word of prayer as we invite the presence of God into this place. Father, in the name of Jesus, we do thank you so much for every promise you've given to us in your word. You promised to give to us wisdom, and we do request that now. As we approach a time when a vote will be taken, we do ask that you would give to us the kind of insight that comes from above. It is our prayer tonight that as the candidates speak, truth will pour forth from their mouths, and we do ask that you would give to us clarity and insight. When we leave tonight, help us to leave informed and ready to engage with wisdom. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Good evening. Come on, y'all. We're not online. Good evening. All right, that's much better. We certainly appreciate you taking your time out to be here to join us this evening. We do believe that an informed electorate make good decisions. And so our effort and our contribution to the community is to host a candidate forum this evening. And we want to express our gratitude to the candidates who have responded and look forward to a robust dialogue this evening. There's a few house rules that I want to go over. We are a church. And so therefore, as a church, we do not endorse, we do not support any particular candidate. We just create space for dialogue to occur. And so that's what we are doing here this evening. And so this space is open to candidates. If they reach out, they have the opportunity to come and engage in a meaningful way. And with that, I'll ask Sean to introduce or recognize some of our partners.
Thank you so much, Ronald Brise. Again, we're so excited to have candidates here this evening so we can hear the things that they want to do in this community. And one of the things that the partners are involved in is making sure that we have an engaged electorate, as Mr. Brise said, and an informed electorate. Some of the partners that we have here tonight, of course, is the Well Activity Center here at Patmos Chapel. And as you can hear by the noise coming to your right and my left, we are an active center. We are a very active center. I'm glad that you're able to hear tonight, just not to see the candidates, but to see how active we are. And that's one of the things that we want to be a part of in this community. Would like to give a special thanks to our senior pastor, Pastor James Doggett, who gave the prayer this evening, and his associate pastor, Pastor Marvin McLean, the leaders of this particular church. And of course, we want to invite you not to come tonight, but all throughout the week, we are open and available and active. Another partner that I want to make mention is a network called Joy Broadcasting Network. Joy Broadcasting Network is an on-demand network that you can find on your on-demand network, such as Roku. Does anybody have Roku in the house? Thank you. Apple TV. Do you have Apple TV in the house? So you have the opportunity to view the Joy Broadcasting Network and to see the Christian things that we put on, Christian broadcasting, hopeful broadcasting, spiritual broadcasting, to inspire you and to uplift you. So those are the two partners that we want to recognize this evening. And of course, we are so excited to have the candidates to be a part of this process. Brise, back to you.
Sure, thank you. So recognizing that it's pouring outside. Oh, I think I hear something over the top, right? So it's pouring outside. So we are streaming live, and I know that some have already sent information out to others so that they can watch online. And so it's at patmoschapel.org. You can go there to our YouTube channel, and it's hit live, and therefore you can watch it as well. We want to recognize Naomi Joy. Thank you for playing this evening, our music. Oh, you got one more? Oh, okay. And then after that, we'll turn it over to Dan Smith, who will introduce our moderator, and then we will get right into it.
do better than that. That was Naomi Joy. I mean, she is so known in the Central Florida community. I know it's just a matter of time when she might run for office, too. Anyway, she is the former band director, Jones High School, marching band, teacher there. I mean, wow. Yes, yes, yes. She plays at all the mayor's events, and she's everywhere. So, you know, thank you, Naomi. You're bringing joy to us. Okay, so now let's move on to our moderator. We are so glad to have in our presence and in the house Monica Hoyos. All right. Yes, come on up. I'll help you up. Let me tell you a little bit about Monica. She's a first-generation Colombian-American bilingual communications professional and voiceover actor with a background in both community and medical interpretation. She holds a BA in communications in Spanish from Old Dominican University and a master's in education in curriculum and instruction with a concentration in TESOL. For all you educators, I'm sure you know what that means. Anyway, from George Mason University. With years of experience in the public and private sectors, Monica specializes in multicultural training, project management, and media. In 2025, she joined Florida National News as managing editor and reporter, continuing her mission to inform, connect, and uplift diverse communities. So that's who our moderator is this evening, Monica Hoyos. Let's give it up. Let's make her feel welcome. Yes. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Monica.
Well, thank you so much, very much, for that introduction. I really do appreciate it. Good evening, and thank you all so much for having me here tonight. Let me go ahead and introduce our wonderful candidates. First, I would like to go ahead and introduce Ms. Coretta Anthony Smith. She is a graduate from Georgetown and the University of Florida, is the managing attorney for Anthony Smith Law. Welcome. Mr. Alan Grayson. Mr. Grayson is a Harvard University graduate, is a former U.S. congressman who left office in 2017. Welcome. And Representative LaVon Bracey Davis is not able to join us tonight. However, she did ask that we read a statement on her behalf. And she says, as a proud candidate for Florida State Senate District 15, I'm running on a platform built to lift, build, and deliver. I've spent my time in the Florida House fighting for everyday people, expanding access to affordable housing, protecting voting rights, and ensuring our schools and families have what they need to thrive. My passion for justice, service, and equity is deeply rooted in both my faith and my family's legacy of civil rights leadership. Should we get started?
Let's get the party started.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yes, I'm just timekeeper. I'm not a candidate. I'm just keeping track of time. All right.
So the first set of questions will be education-related questions. How will you advocate for increased funding in teacher salaries and also retention incentives to address potential teacher shortages in District 15 schools?
Hi, would you like me to answer that question first? Okay, sure. And is there a particular amount of time that we have per question? Since he said he was a timekeeper, I just want to know.
Yes. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes per question. Thank you. And thank you for Patmos Church allowing us to be here. I think that having a voter platform where the voters get an opportunity to actually see the candidates and to see how we will perform in Tallahassee is extremely important. So thank you for that opportunity. As it relates to teachers and how to keep teachers and to keep them engaged and in the classroom. Of course, education is extremely important. My mother was a teacher, her sister, my aunt is a teacher, and I have a multitude of teachers in my family, my cousins, who's usually here, but she's not today. They're all in the education system. So one of the ideas that I have as it relates to teachers and making sure that we keep them and we keep them engaged and wanting to be here is that I believe that the legislature could do something as it relates to their student loans. A lot of teachers come out and they have a lot of loans, and if they can't afford to take the jobs because of those loans, then they can't, teach our children. And so a lot of them, they want to go into elementary education. They want to teach high school students, but we have to make it attractive to them. So of course we need to raise pay. That's a given. However, I would also suggest, because this is something that could easily be done, because they do it with other like first responders, things like that, is to do something as it relates to their student loan debt. That can also be incentivize them to want to go into that particular field, as well as raising the pay and the resources that are available to teachers. A lot of times we hear about teachers having to come out of pocket. My cousins are always going and getting ready for their classrooms at the beginning of the year, and they're paying for that out of their own pockets. So if we could partner with some community organizations, some nonprofits, in addition to having resources that will help cover those costs, so that they can have an active classroom that's resourceful and educational and instructive. So that's what I would have us do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My turn?
Mr. Grayson?
Thanks. Looks to me like your timer may not be working over there.
No.
So you'll have to let me know. You've
yes.
got one over there. Okay. All right. It says 3 minutes. Hi, everybody. How are you tonight? Good. Is it a good time to be alive? What do you think? I think it's a good time to be alive. Let me answer the question, but I'm going to move on to something else if we have any time left afterward. The answer to the question is what I've already done. I represented this entire area, all of West Orange County, when I was in Congress. And in my first term, out of 3 terms in Congress, I delivered an extra $100 million to the schools here in Orange County. And you may recall, those of you who were here back then, Alan Grayson saved our schools. Alan Grayson saved our schools. Alan Grayson saved our schools. What were they talking about? They were talking about the fact that 7 schools, mostly minority schools, were scheduled to close. And 8-year-olds would have had to walk an extra 2 or 3 or 4 miles to get to school every morning. And I prevented that from happening. That $100 million prevented that from happening. I saved our schools. Now, some of that money went for something that was personally important to me, and that was school construction. I had 5 kids in public school here in West Orange County. And when they started going to school, before I was elected to Congress, they were going to school in trailers. The noise was so loud. Talk about so loud. My mic is gone dead. How about now? All right. The noise was so loud when my second daughter went to school that she couldn't hear what the teacher was saying. Well, after I'd been in Congress for 2 years, those children, their classmates, thousands of others, were going to school in brick schoolhouses. So if you want to know what to do about improving education and educational opportunities here in Orange County, in this district, I think I'm something of an expert on that subject because I've done it. Now, beyond that, I just want to say that I appreciate the introduction and asking us about our plans. My plan, Reverend, is the same as your plan. My plan is to shelter the homeless, feed the hungry, and heal the sick. That's my plan. My plan is to make sure that everyone can be all that we can be and be fruitful and multiply and not be chained by poverty or poor education or poor health or discrimination. That's my plan. So I ask you to vote for Alan Grayson. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. The next question. Given the universal choice environment and increased funding in K through 12 scholarships, the vouchers, how will you ensure that public schools in District 15 remain competitive and well supported? Miss Anthony
Okay.
Smith.
Am I going to go first, or are we taking turns? I just want to make sure.
You go ahead.
She'll call your name.
Okay, all right. As it relates to school vouchers, I understand that the vouchers are here, they're here to stay. But what we need to do is, we need to make sure that schools that receive those vouchers, if they're going to be going to private schools, that they be held to the same standards as public schools. So they need to be able to take those same tests, to pass those tests so that they receive the same education. And I don't want to call out the private school, but I had a friend, and this is a story, and he paid for his kids to go to this private school, and by the time they got to Winter Park High, they were behind. So he paid for private school from K all the way until they got ready for high school, thinking that he was doing his children, an advantage, giving them an advantage, and so that their foundation would be better because they had smaller classroom sizes, that they would get more attention. And they got to Winter Park High and they couldn't compete because the school had not been held to the same standard as public schools. So if someone's receiving a voucher, just because the school is public doesn't make it better. And we need to make sure that those public schools who are receiving the vouchers that our tax dollars pay for, that they put out the same quality education and the same quality students. Because what we don't want is for them to use those school vouchers and then not be able to compete by the time that they get out of high school. And so that's how I think that we make sure that our kids stay competitive and that the vouchers are used for good use. And we need to make sure that the teachers are accredited, that they go through the same process that public school teachers go through. You can't just have a private school get money and then say you can do whatever you want to when our students get there.
Let's hear that question again.
Candidate Allen, of course, yes. Given the universal choice environment and increased funding for K through 12 scholarships, the vouchers, how will you ensure that public schools in District 15 remain competitive and well supported?
Well, the answer is that we shouldn't be in this situation in the first place. And I've been against it. I was clearly against it when I was in Congress. I remain against it. What you're seeing here is the institution of a separate but equal system, which isn't equal. It's only separate. We have public schools and we have private schools, and we used to have white schools and we used to have black schools. And it didn't work. It was never really equal. I don't know why we're doing this bizarre experiment on our own children. When we had something that did work, and now we're destroying it, we're undermining it. We're undermining the public school system. We're doing this because crazy ideologues, Republicans, in Tallahassee want to give money to special interests outside of the public school system. That's why this is happening. So I don't accept the premise of this. I will tell you that my mother and my father were both public school teachers, each one of them for more than 30 years. And they worked in an environment where public school education was a tradition that went back more than 200 years. In fact, America invented the public schools. There weren't any public schools until the Massachusetts colony came along. So I think what we're doing is kind of crazy, and I'm against it. I will not go along with it. I will tell you that I will do my best to protect those students like my 5 children who go to public school. But what we have here is an effort to discriminate against them. And I think that that's intolerable. I will not let it stand.
Thank you. Florida's policies on banning or restricting books in public schools have generated significant debate and impact. With reports of thousands of books being pulled and potential penalties for non-compliance, how will you ensure that school districts and individual educators are adequately supported and protected while navigating these complex policies? Candidate Allen, would you like to respond to that one?
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yesterday, my second child, Star, told me that she was reading Kurt Vonnegut's book, Slaughterhouse-Five. I read that book when I was 11. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that book is banned in Florida. That is shocking to me. That is shocking to me. That you cannot have in a school today in Florida a book that I so enjoyed, that I learned so much from when I was growing up. And the answer is why? And the answer is mind control. What is happening is that Republicans in Tallahassee are trying to indoctrinate our children with propaganda. I swear to you that if all 5 of my children read Slaughterhouse-Five when they were 10 or 11 years old like I was, nothing bad would happen. Nothing bad would happen. In fact, I predict that it would enrich their lives. So it's another crazy thing that these crazy Republicans in Tallahassee are doing to us and to our children to ban any books. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to run the place, but I am saying you know where I stand on this. And you can be sure that I will take every opportunity to make sure that those people who want to do this mind control chip in our brain thing in Tallahassee are thwarted. And I will put my wooden shoes in their gears and do everything that I can to prevent it. And you can believe that that's going to be something, because when I was in Congress, my last 4 years in Congress, I passed more laws than any other member of Congress, even though the Republicans were in charge. That was 121 laws in 4 years, and every single time I passed one of those laws, I needed 30 Republican votes. I got them. Got them. Because I have a certain, shall we say, clarity about these things that they respect. This is a matter of principle. You don't tell public school students or anybody else what you can read. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Candidate Coretta.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if many people know, because it's not gotten a lot of news coverage, but there is a current case in the federal courts that are challenging that law. And the premise behind it is that banning books makes our children inadequate. So if the books are banned and they're not banned at other high schools across the country, how can we get into Ivy League institutions? Even here in the state of Florida, how can we compete if we don't have the knowledge that's in those books, the grammar, the diction, everything that goes along with reading, the comprehension, the learning about new cultures, new environments? So it puts our kids behind. Hopefully, this will be resolved in the court system, and they will realize at what a disadvantage that this is giving our children when we cannot read books. I mean, this is one thing that former Congressman Grayson and I agree on, is that books, education is key. We all know that. The more educated you are about a particular topic, the more well-versed you can speak on it. How can our kids compete, take the SAT, take the ACT, if we're not able to read the same books? We will be at a disadvantage. Hopefully the federal court systems recognize that. If not, our legislators do need to do something about it, because otherwise Florida will fall behind. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for answering these education questions. We're now going to move on to the next topic, and it's going to be regarding economic development. Okay. Candidate Allen, with rising housing costs, what policies would you propose to maintain affordable housing, including rental and ownership opportunities for working families?
I don't have the ability to get through this in 3 minutes, but I'll do my best. The government almost entirely controls the housing market. They just do it in a way that's almost invisible. I was on the housing committee when I was in Congress, and I'll tell you that it was shocking to me to see the extent to which the government made things happen or not happen in the housing market. So when I was there, I tried to do a couple of things. And some of them were successful and some of them were not. But this was based upon the fact that the government in the end decides our mortgage rates and our property taxes and our insurance. Okay, so what do you pay in your mortgage? It's PITI. Okay, except for that principal payment, which the government determines indirectly, it's all government controlled. So what that means is that if you're paying more for housing, particularly if you're paying more for housing than you can afford, that means that your elected officials have let you down. They have failed you. And that's true of the political class in this area for a long time now. But to be specific about this, with regard to interest rates, what I did was I brought an organization called NACA here that provided 0% mortgages, no interest mortgages to this area, to the minorities and to the poor people of the area. And there were thousands of them who took advantage of this. You think about that. If you just have to pay for the house and you don't have the bank on your back for 30 years, that makes things affordable. In addition to that, NACA brought zero down payment mortgages to this area. Zero down payment mortgages are important because if you actually ask people, including my 5 children, why don't you own a house? They will tell you, for the most part, it's because I can't afford the down payment. And why is that? Because most people can't afford to fix a $600 carburetor that breaks in their car, much less have a $60,000 down payment. So one thing I did was to bring zero down payment loans to this area. And the second thing that I tried to do was to eliminate the down payment requirement for FHA loans and VA loans. I didn't do it then. I will try again next time. In the meantime, what we need to do is not just limit it to the fact that the bank is on our backs for 30 years, not just that, but also to reform property taxes and reform insurance. With regard to property taxes, it is a ridiculous farce that the exemption that we all receive for owning property is $25,000. It should be what it costs to actually own a house. I'll come back to this so I have more time later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Coretta.
Thank you. This is one of my top platform priorities, workforce housing. So we have the Sadowski Fund that was formed in, 1991. We have SAIL, and both of those programs are typically for very low income housing. And a lot of the resources from the Sadowski Fund are often taken and used elsewhere instead of for housing. However, we have very few programs that actually target workforce housing for working class or working families. And so the Live Local Act was passed in 2023, and it incentivizes companies like Disney and Universal to build housing that their employees can purchase or can afford, and it gives them tax incentives and things like that. But we also, and while the Live Local Act is something, so it's better than nothing, but it just doesn't go far enough. Why just incentivize big businesses like Disney, Universal? What about incentivizing medium businesses, small businesses? Small businesses make up 99% of the employers in the state of Florida. So if we could incentivize small businesses to also have those same type of tax incentives to offer housing for their employees, to incentivize their employees to pay for homes, or to help them with rent, just like we do for Disney and Universal, that's one of the things that I plan on working for when I get to Tallahassee, is we cannot forget the middle class. And it seems as though the low class, they try to take care of that, and the upper class doesn't really worry about it. But the problem is the affordable housing is for our working class families, and that's where we need to focus on and get more programs like the Live Local Act and incentivize our employers to do more for their employees. But if there are no incentives, they can't do it. I'm a small business owner. If I was provided tax incentives or tax breaks, I, of course, would help my employees to the best of my ability to be able to afford a house, a mortgage. But you have to incentivize medium and small businesses to be able to do it. And that's what I would work on when I get to Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunrail's proposed expansion into new parts of Central Florida presents a major opportunity. Candidate Coretta, how would you ensure that communities within District 15, such as Pine Hills, Apopka, and Washington Shores, directly benefit from this expansion in terms of job access, economic development, and reduced transit inequity?
So I think it was last year or the year before, they passed a $6 million, they allocated $6 million to look into the feasibility and to make sure that a program like that can be expanded and that it is feasible for those districts. I would want to see what that study says because it needs to be feasible for it to work. We definitely need an expansion by Sunrail. And I want to see how that report turns out to see if it is in fact feasible. If not, then of course we can't do it because they're putting $6 million into the study. But also, looking into the airports and other ways, if it's not feasible, we do need to expand our infrastructure so that we can have better transportation into those parts of our district. So as it relates to Sunrail in particular, I do think that we need to wait and see what the outcome of that study is, especially when we've allocated $6 million to it, because we would really hate for that $6 million to go to waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, let me ask you a follow-up question. What policies would you support to make sure these neighborhoods are not just connected by tracks, but truly uplifted by the investment?
So it needs to be uplifted by the investment, and we can start by doing that as well by, again, going to small businesses and local businesses, making sure our citizens are the ones that get the contracts for those businesses. Our citizens are the ones that are employed on any such project that would come into place, and it's very easy to do. You can make sure that a contractor employs a certain amount of people who are actually residents within the district instead of bringing in employees from other parts of the state or bringing in cheaper labor from elsewhere, especially with our minimum wage going up, I think in 2026 by $15 an hour, although that is still not a lot of money, but it's still better than where we were before. But by making sure that our contractors and that hire local subcontractors, our local subcontractors hire our residents, and that they're paid a minimum amount for what they are, for the services that they're performing. So if we have a community that is working on this project together, naturally it will be a more cohesive community. So that's what I would do to make sure that we stay together and that this is a project that benefits our community, and our community is very excited about it, because if we're working on it, we're building it together, we're much more excited about it, and we have something to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Allen?
All right, as I correctly predicted, I was unable to answer the last question in 3 minutes. I do want to say one or two more things about that. There are right solutions and there are wrong solutions. The notion that your employer is going to go ahead and build something nice for you and just hand it to you is not right. Okay, this country actually has a brutal experience with company towns going back 150 years. We don't need company towns. One of the things that makes life livable, actually, is the fact that your employer can fire you, you're an employee at will, but your employer can't throw you out of your house. Well, this threatens to change that. Your employer will be able to fire you and throw you out of your house. Why would we want to create a system like that? That seems crazy to me, just crazy. In addition to that, it cuts down on labor mobility, speaking as a former economist. I was the only economist actually to be in Congress, by the way. And in addition to that, regarding these incentives, does anybody seriously believe that Disney needs more of our money? Seriously? The only problem in this country that some people think that we have is that rich people don't have enough money. We don't need to give incentives to Disney for something like this. Disney makes tens of billions of dollars a year in profit. And I'm sorry to single out Disney. Actually, I have a high opinion of Disney. But the same thing is true of all these people who have their hand out to get government taxpayer money when they already make billions and billions of dollars. Come on. That doesn't make any sense. Now, turning to Sunrail, I'm actually responsible for the fact that Sunrail Phase 2 happened. That was me. I made that happen. And the way I made it happen, I'll tell you specifically, is that I sat down face to face with the Secretary of Transportation. I explained Sunrail Phase 2 to him. I explained it needed to be moved up the line because it was way down the line in federal funding and it needed to be put at the top. I said to him, the reason for that is many, but the primary reason for that is that Sunrail Phase 1 goes only through the comfortable part of town. And Sunrail Phase 2 actually goes to the part of town where people might need it. And he thought that was a convincing argument, and that's why Sunrail Phase 2 exists today. So if you want to know about somebody who could actually make Sunrail Phase 3 and 4 and 5 happen, you're looking at him. That would be me, because I already did it once. Thanks.
Thank you. What would you do to make sure that housing that gets built is truly affordable and well connected to transportation and services? Candidate Coretta?
We need to make sure, thank you, I'm sorry. We need to make sure that we have the adequate infrastructure, meaning the roads, so we don't have a lot of congestion, first of all, to get to the development. We also need to make sure that the developments are environmentally friendly, like green landscaping and things of that nature. Also, to make sure that they're affordable if the incentives are being offered. And when I say incentives, I mean tax incentives. It's great to just say people should go out and do what's right. How often does that happen? Never. So without incentivizing people, and incentivizing could just be wherein you're giving a tax break, a tax cut. Just because somebody has the money doesn't mean that they're going to spend it right or responsibly. But we need to make sure that if we're building workforce housing and that it is in fact affordable, that we have to keep the mortgages so that people can afford them. I was talking to a realtor yesterday at NARBA, and she was talking about how blacks get denied mortgages 17% of the time compared to whites at 11% of the time. So if we can't get affordable mortgages, we won't be able to afford the houses. So we need to look at mortgages, make sure that there are anti-discrimination policies are in place, make sure that the citizens can actually afford the mortgages, and make sure that when the communities are being built, that our contractors are keeping in mind that this is affordable housing. It needs to be affordable. In another panel that I was on, they were talking about how they couldn't give away some of the homes that were built by Habitat for Community. And someone in the audience raised a very interesting question. Is that house affordable? Just because the house was built doesn't mean that the people can afford it. And we need to make sure if the houses are being built, we can't just look at the market rate. We have to look at what the people who are buying the homes, what they can afford to buy. And so I think that if you just build it and say market rate, that's not affordable. And that's what we need to work on, making sure our contractors, our banks, our lenders, our mortgage brokers are working on getting the loans approved and that the homes are actually affordable and not at market rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Allen?
Go ahead and read the question again.
Sure. What would you do to make sure the housing that gets built is truly affordable and well connected to transportation and services?
Well, I already addressed what it would take to make it affordable. We have to reduce PITI. I'm not going to go through that again. But regarding services, you ask a very interesting question. There are certain parts of the experience of life that are completely dominated by the decisions made publicly and by our elected leaders. The fact that it took me an extra half hour to get here tonight is a function of the failure of the political class here and nobody else, okay? There's nothing that I could have done to avoid the extra half hour of traffic that I had to drive through to get here today. And that actually is a paradigm that we should think about a little bit ourselves. There are many problems that are too big to solve individually. And that's why we have elected officials, and that's why we vote. And that's why I did what I did in Congress for 6 years, to make your lives and our lives and my lives of my children and my family better. So with regard to services, okay, let's take a specific example. I have a house that's worth more than $1 million here in West Orange County. We get our water out of a hole in the ground. And then when we're done with that water, we take that used water and we shove it underneath our front lawn. My God, this is the year 2025. Why is it that half of all the houses in West Orange County don't have the obvious public service of water and sewer? And the answer is because I've been out of office for a while, because if I'd remained in office, that wouldn't be true any longer. I took my earmark money, the money that you get to direct for a specific service, a specific purpose, and I used that money to build some water and sewer systems here in West Orange County, here in the district. And that's what needs to be done. Each state senator determines the spending of between $50 and $100 million each year. And that money never seems to go to you. It never goes to you. Now, if that money and the other $100 or $200 billion that state and local government raise take away from us and then give back to us, take out of our left pocket and then it disappears rather than going to your right pocket, if that money were spent on services for the community, schools, roads, and the things that make life livable, like clean water and clean air and clean food, then we wouldn't be in this mess. And it wouldn't have cost me $5 in tolls to get here today. $5 on roads that were paid for 40 years ago.
Time.
All right. I've made my point.
Thank you both so much. Now, moving on, we will now be asking questions about health and human services.
And response times will be 2 minutes for this section.
Thank you. Those with untreated mental illness and substance abuse stated their conditions make it difficult for them to obtain gainful employment and stable housing. Candidate Allen, how would you address that challenge?
In the way that I already have. In the 111th Congress, Congress passed a law that, for the first time in history, required that health care provided by the federal government that goes to people like me on Medicare, goes to people on Medicaid, goes to the military and their families, that was required for the first time in history to include mental health coverage and mental health benefits. In addition to that, a Grayson amendment that I passed my last day that I was in Congress, 5 months after I'd been defeated, a Grayson amendment mandated that everyone leaving the military has a psychological, physical test of mental health. In other words, a checkup from the neck up. And anything that gets found during that test is covered for the rest of your life. Why is that? Because 250,000 US soldiers came back from Afghanistan and Iraq with brain abnormalities that you can see on a CAT scan. I'm not talking about they were upset or they were depressed or anything like that. I'm talking about brain abnormalities you can see on a CAT scan. All that happened my first 2 years in Congress. And the way that it happened was that people like me on the blue team spoke to people on the red team, including one key congressman from Pennsylvania who'd had mental health issues in his family. And we built that bridge to make that happen. Now, what I'd like to see is complete, total equality between mental health and physical health. Because if you have a mental health problem, you reach a certain point where your physical health is irrelevant. So we have to make sure that people enjoy life to the fullest, especially those who are troubled by mental health.
Thank you. Candidate
Thank you.
Coretta?
Can you please read that question again?
Yes.
Okay.
Those with untreated mental illness and substance abuse stated their conditions make it difficult for them to obtain gainful employment and stable housing. How would you address that challenge?
I'm not sure if anyone in here has heard of Matthew's Hope. I was at the Apopka City Council meeting last week, and they were talking about it. And it's a resource where they have buses, and they allow them to sleep in the buses. But it's not just for the unhoused. It's for mental health. So what they do is they give them food, clothing, shelter, and have them evaluated by a doctor for just what you're talking about. If they're having a problem with mental health or lack of housing, and they provide them with the resources to be able to make it on their own. Like, that's the goal of it. And what they were asking for at Matthew's Hope was just a place to park their buses throughout Apopka. So they already had it in Brevard County, and they already had the buses, and they were saying that they get most of their money from different organizations and donations, but the entire goal of that project is to help people with mental health issues, to help them attain housing, to help them get jobs so that they can get back on their feet. What I would propose is, since that's already a success, let's copy that model. Let's just keep going with what has already been proven to be a true and correct way of helping those with mental health and in helping them attain housing and employment. And that's what I would do to help with that situation. I would go with what's already been done and just expand on that even further. Thank you.
Thank you. Advent Health and Orlando Health officials stated that they have launched a joint project that will help tackle food insecurity in the Central Florida area. The joint venture between Advent Health and Orlando Health is called the Smart Bus and Red Bus Initiative in Osceola County, feeding homeless children and providing educational technology for them. Candidate Allen, how can you or your administration reach across the aisle to form partnerships that will benefit the community in your district?
I'm sorry to say this, but the program that you're talking about is lip service. It's not a meaningful program that helps people. It's never going to be that way. This notion that we have to take handouts from institutions who are profitable is mistaken. What we need to do is to rise up and make sure, as I said earlier, that we feed the homeless, that we feed the hungry, we shelter the homeless, and we heal the sick. Because that is what a just society does, and that is what we were taught more than 2,000 years ago. This is not something new. We don't have to depend upon two staggeringly profitable institutions to give us food. My God, that's ridiculous. What happened to the loaves and the fishes? Did they go to these two institutions? This is wrong. But to answer your second question, the latter part of your question, what we need to do is to examine our values. And we need to come together and solve our common problems. Because every time a child is hungry, that is the failure of the political class. Now, the first vote that I ever took was a vote to extend health coverage through Medicaid to 4 million children around the United States. And because that was my first vote, it was very meaningful to me. I went down to the floor of the House and I thanked our leadership and I thanked the other members of Congress that I could vote on such a glorious, beautiful, important thing. To see that 4 million children around the country, and that included 10,000 right here in my district, could see a doctor when they're sick. That's what we need to do, more of that.
Thank you. Candidate Coretta?
Thank you. Personally, I think that what Orlando Health and Advent Health, what they're doing is commendable. Because if they're taking their profits, instead of putting it back in the pockets of their shareholders, and they're using it to benefit the unhoused and feed hungry children and to provide them with educational resources, I think that that's commendable. I think that our government should be working to advance those initiatives that they've already started. I think that we can work across the aisles because that is a bipartisan issue. Several people don't want to see the unhoused throughout their community. You want people to have housing. You want them to have jobs. You want them to be able to feed their children. You want the children to be educated. You don't want to perpetuate the cycle. So if we are able to, as a legislature, work across the aisles on that common goal, because I don't think if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you want to say you want to see hungry children. Nobody wants to see that. Everybody wants children to be fed, the children to be educated, and we need to work together, find a place in the budget to make that happen. And we don't just say it's never going to happen, so we give up. If we give up, nothing will ever be achieved. We have to have hope. We have to have hope that this will get better. That's why I'm running. I'm running on hope and to make a difference, not to give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Coretta. Let me ask you, do you have a vision or plan that could foster affordable health care in all age groups?
So I know that there's a Medicaid for all push with our current legislature. I really don't foresee that happening. However, I do think that if we could do some type of some type of health for, there's already health and Medicaid for the very poor. We need to incentivize our medium-sized businesses, again, to provide health care. I personally provide health care to my employees without any type of incentives right now. But for those who don't, and I know other people who offer, they may say, okay, here's $1,000 per month that you can have to purchase insurance. But that's not a lot going these days. And if you have a family, I know for my family itself, it's only 3 of us, it's way more than $1,000 per month. But if we can incentivize businesses, and when I say incentivize, I mean giving them tax incentives, tax breaks, things like that, to provide health insurance for their employees, and it's not just Medicaid for the very poor. Also invest in, and I don't know if we have one in Apopka, but at least in Orlando, there's Orange Blossom Family Health. They provide health services for anyone who comes, and it's either reduced or it's free. And so they will provide medication. You can go see a dentist. I believe in investing in more services like that that are available to the public. So if you don't have at least, you can go see a surgeon, maybe get veneers and new teeth, but you can at least go and you can get physicals. You can go to the dentist every year. You can go get checkups, and you can go get the services that are vital to our health. We need to invest in more community services like that so that we have those resources available for everyone in the community. And either they're free or they're at a reduced price. And that's how I would help bridge that gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Allen, how about you? Do you have a vision or plan that could foster affordable health care in all age groups?
Well, again, it's what I've done. Just want to go back briefly to the previous issue. I had a heart problem a few years ago, and I went to one of these 2 institutions that you're referring to in the emergency room. And they took me in, and I was monitored for 24 hours, and I was released the next afternoon. And they sent a bill for $25,000. The fact that they may hand somebody a sandwich, a $5 sandwich, does not make that okay. Okay? A certain point of view is that these institutions are predators, and they're trying to make it look good by the good deeds that you're describing. But they can't wash their hands clean that way, as far as I'm concerned. Now, with regard to health care for all, oh my God, why do we have the Medicaid expansion, which has reached 15 million people, despite the fact that the Republicans in Tallahassee turned down $70 billion for our health care? so that we could see a doctor when they're sick? Why is it that we have the employer mandate, which requires that if an employer employs you for more than 30 hours a week, that employer has to give you health coverage? That was because of a particular vote in my first term in Congress that passed by one vote. That was me. And the next election, the following election, the healthcare industrial complex, which was very angry about the fact that we had done that, spent $2 million to defeat me. $2 million of airing propaganda into your ears and your eyes that had nothing to do with that vote, because I had stood for universal health care and made it work. Now, in addition to that, I spent a very significant amount of my time in Congress with the Medicare You Can Buy Into Act, a Grayson Act that was 4 pages long, that would have opened up Medicare to everybody of every age and made health care affordable for everyone.
Time.
Okay.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to budget and appropriation questions. Florida's current budget is $118.6 billion. The state has 113,752 full-time employee positions. This makes up about 2.8% of personal income. The average person pays $2,087 in general revenue-related taxes and fees. Candidate Allen, do you think that the current tax and revenue structure is appropriate to meet the needs of our state? And are there any changes that you would advocate for?
Well, the biggest change is the fact that this exemption that we get that's supposed to take care of our homestead, that's the name of the homestead exemption. This exemption that we get is $25,000. There's just no way that you could buy even a used trailer to live in for that kind of money. Okay, so first priority is to make the homestead exemption real, to make it what it's supposed to be, the cost of a homestead. And if that were the case, then people who had a modest homestead, not in $1 million house, but maybe a $250,000 house, they would be excluded from having to pay property taxes. Just like the first $25,000 of the value of their house is now excluded. That is the single most important thing that we can do. But the question is, what are we going to do for renters? Okay, that's a quarter of the population. What are we going to do to make it fair for them? Well, as it turns out, renters pay more in property taxes than homeowners do. And the reason for that is that there is no exemption for renters. So what I propose to do is to return that extra tax that we put on renters back to the renter, a refund. We are overcharging property taxes to renters. We need to return that money to them. This would be a major, major change in how we pay for government here in Florida, and a change for the better. Because the government shouldn't be on your back when you own a trailer and you're just trying to get by. That's not, the government should be on your back. In fact, if the government were to take back some of these incentives from these multi-billion dollar corporations, okay, as if they don't have enough money already, that would be a major reform in government here in Florida. I'd be in favor of that as well.
Thank you. Candidate Coretta?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that question?
Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to read the whole question, just the
last part.
Do you want me to read the last part? Yes. Yeah. Do you think that the current tax and revenue structure is appropriate to meet the needs of our state? And are there any changes that you would advocate for?
I don't believe that it's necessary right now, and I do believe that we need change. Orange County sends far more up to Tallahassee than we receive back. So I think that that's one of the first things that we need to address is how or why Orange County is not getting back, at least on a percentage type of basis, for the amount of money that we send up there, we need those resources back. And so that's one of the things that I would propose that we work on is how we can get some of that money from the government back to Orange County. We're sending up the revenue, but we're not getting back the services. And that's one of the first priorities that I would work on as it relates to the budget and making sure that Orange County is taken care of and that it's accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. The legislature is constitutionally required to pass a balanced budget, therefore requiring legislature as a whole to develop priorities and individual members to prioritize which local requests to champion. Candidate Coretta, what process will you put in place to make that determination?
Honestly, I would sit down and talk to the constituents in the district. Because in sitting down and in knocking on doors since I've been running for office, what sometimes we think are issues really aren't. And what we think we're doing a very good job from the community, they don't prioritize the same way that we do. And so one of the things that I have just in knocking on doors, for example, I've knocked on doors and they thought that affordable housing was the same thing as Section 8 housing. And they've thought that when we advocate and say affordable housing for working families, they were like, well, are you gonna put Section 8 housing right here across from me? Or I was talking to another community over near Tangelo Park. They don't like the community land trust, but that's been a big push by our government. So when we sit down and we talk about prioritization, we need to talk to our constituents. What do they prioritize? Not just what do we prioritize. I know that housing is an issue because it's something I hear about from my clients. I know that insurance is an issue because it's something I hear about from my clients. But there are other issues that other people may have that I don't know about. So if we have not been open and we have not been communicating effectively with the community, then we don't know what issues to prioritize. So before I sat down and balanced any budget and made sure we were having any type of issues and what I would prioritize, I would hold a town hall, whether it be remote, Facebook, Zoom, or in person, such as we're doing right now, to make sure that the community is involved in prioritizing our issues for Orange County. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Allen?
Let's hear the question again.
Yes. The legislature is constitutionally required to pass a balanced budget, therefore requiring legislature as a whole to develop priorities and individual members to prioritize which local requests to champion. What process will you put in place to make that determination?
The process that I put in place. Every earmark, which is all going to the community for specific projects, was approved when I was in Congress. Every single one of them. We reached out to members of the community to bring in even more money than that. And in my first year in Congress, I was a freshman, had trouble maybe finding where the bathrooms were. But my first year in Congress, we brought in an extra $100 million because I had somebody on the staff working full time to do just that through the competitive grant process. The competitive grant process meant we reached out to members of the community whom we thought maybe might be able to pull in an extra $1 million or $2 million from the federal government, worked with them very closely. Sometimes I had to make some calls. And as a result of that, we brought in an extra $100 million my first year in Congress. All told, we brought to this district an extra $2 billion for every one of you. If you didn't move here recently, you benefited from an extra $3,000 that I brought to this district when I was in Congress. And you're welcome, because that's the actual job. That is how you do what you just described. You do it by grabbing everything you can grab. In fact, I was written up in the newspaper because I said, I'm not voting for this particular bill unless we get a hurricane research center here in Orlando, the hurricane research center, the National Hurricane Research Center. I'm not voting for this bill unless we get the National Research Center for Hurricanes here in Orlando if this bill passes. Did pass the House. I did get that in the bill, but unfortunately the Senate didn't pass it. That's what you have to do. You have to work, work, work. Any kind of opportunity you see to bring money home, you do it. If I could bring the Washington Monument to Orlando, I would do it.
Thank you. Regarding insurance, the legislature in the last few sessions have passed legislation to address the current insurance crisis. Candidate Coretta, do you think that the policy has had a positive, meaningful impact for the consumer and to stabilize the marketplace? If not, what proposal or proposals would you put forward to ameliorate the current situation?
Absolutely not. The current proposals do not work. So HB 837, which passed in March of 2023, gave the insurance companies, it was supposed to stabilize the market, but what it did is it gave them a blank check with no accountability and no transparency. So they were able to take our premiums and not pay claims, and that's what they've been continuing to do. There was an investigation done by the Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Tribune that found out that the insurance companies were actually playing a shell game. So while telling us that there was fraud by lawyers or construction and contractors, but meanwhile, all they're doing is they're moving their profits around from company to company. And they had investigations. Our House, they called up insurance company they called up insurance company representatives and CEOs and they asked them questions. They pretty much admitted they're committing fraud. And guess what happened? Nothing. We didn't find out anything else about it. You didn't hear anything else about it. The Senate didn't even address it. So one of the first things I would do is I want to know what happened to the billions of dollars that we paid, that our policyholders paid. Where is that money? Where's the transparency? Where is the accountability? The reforms that were given to the insurance companies by House Bill 837, they need to be rolled back. Now, were some reforms needed at the time? Yes. Was a blank check needed to do whatever they wanted to do? No. And what we first need to do is we need to roll back some of the reforms that were given to insurance companies by House Bill 837, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again and that they are transparent and that they are held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Allen?
Well, it's a difficult problem, complicated by the fact that these insurance companies have an iron grip on the Republicans in Tallahassee. They're the ones who get the subsidies from the Republicans in Tallahassee. They're the ones who get the no-show jobs that they give to the Republicans. The system is corrupt, and that's what you're up against. So what you have to do is do a reality test with the Republicans in Tallahassee. Do they want to solve the problem or not? And what I found when I was in Congress is that they did. So I had Democrats and Republicans working together in order to make insurance more affordable. And one of the things that we worked together on was to extend national flood insurance to cover hurricanes and earthquakes and tornadoes and other natural disasters. Why does it just cover floods? I never got an answer for that. Asked so many people, never got an answer for that. So what you do is you test it out. You see whether these people are serious or not. And what you do is you provide them a menu, as I often did when I was in Congress when the Republicans were in charge. And you see if they'll order from the menu. So here are some of the things that we can do. One is that citizens, the government agency that rips us off in the name of trying to moderate these insurance premiums, they should not be able to make a profit. They made a profit last year of $800 from my policy. And the same thing is true, by the way, of everyone here who has a citizen's policy. They ripped you off for $800 last year. Okay, so that needs to change. Second thing that needs to change is the enormous amount of money, billions of dollars, that all these companies spend on reinsurance because we have mandated that each of these policies that we get cover 225-year risks. They have to cover risks that happen only 225 years. I wonder, who is it that has the largest market share in the country of reinsurance? It's Warren Buffett. So you give these people practical solutions to the problem, and you see if you can make progress.
Thank you. And thank you both very much. That is it for these questions for now. And I would actually like to turn and invite members from the audience to please come and feel free to ask questions to our candidates. You may walk up to the podium that's right here to my right.
Just this week, it was reported that President Trump is going to end FEMA after the hurricane season. What kinds of plans would you work to put replacements to replace those kinds of safeguards?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Okay, I'll go first. The answer is that the state has to exactly duplicate all of the coverage that FEMA provides. And that has to happen on the exact day that FEMA is taken away from us by President Trump. We have to have a plan in place. The plan is an exact duplicate. Now, I know what I'm talking about because during one hurricane here, I had a blue tarp over my house that was provided by FEMA. In fact, I was walking downstairs in the midst of the hurricane, and a giant piece of the ceiling collapsed right in front of me on the stairs. I might not be alive today, except for the fact that I'm very slow and was walking down those stairs in the middle of the night very carefully. That is what is needed. We have to rise to the occasion. Now, I will say this. I think that Orange County does a pretty decent job, in particular, of clearing the debris after a hurricane. So I'm not critical at all of Mayor Demings in that regard, not in the least. But when we have a challenge like this, a challenge that is too big for any one person to even think about dealing with, that's when we have to come together and we have to make sure that the safety net, those blue tarps and everything else that FEMA provides, they have to make sure they keep coming to us, and the state works to do that from day one.
So I've been concerned about FEMA going away too, and I think that we need to start now. I don't think that we need to start the day that FEMA is taken away from us. We need to start right now. We need to start investing in types of community policing, so we know that we don't have looters that are taking advantage when a hurricane comes. We need to invest in education and disaster preparedness so that we're prepared when a disaster hits us. We also need to invest in our first responders so that they're adequately equipped to handle any type of disaster when it comes. Because storms don't just come during hurricane season. I mean, think about it this week. I was driving back from Jacksonville the other day, and it started hailing, and we saw tree branches falling from, all sides of the highway, and thank God I wasn't driving, but it was everywhere. You saw debris. So we can't just wait for hurricane season. And this is also why insurance is so important. Because if we have insurance companies that are not paying our claims and aren't helping us after a disaster occurs, we're really going to be SOL. So we need to hold our insurance companies accountable beforehand. We need to invest in more resources for our first responders. We need to educate everyone about disaster preparedness so that we are prepared for when this day comes. If we need to start working on that right now, today. And I hope that that's in the budget that our legislatures are supposed to be meeting on this week, or that they're currently meeting on, because we cannot wait for hurricane season. We need to be working on this now.
Thank you. I want to thank both of you for coming here if either one of you prevails in this election, I'll be thrilled to have you representing me. I would make a suggestion: if you want to win, you bring that young lady to play her musical instrument. When you go to Tallahassee, you'll be a member of the 30% who are Democrats. The 70% who are Republicans will basically live to squash your ideas like a bug. What are you going to do, first of all, to bring them on board? Secondly, to make the voters in this state want to elect more Democrats?
Try to keep our responses to like a minute and a half.
Okay, I'll try to answer this best I can. So I am a trial lawyer, and I represent plaintiffs in insurance disputes and personal injury who've been in car crashes, but it's trial. So I have to work across the aisles all the time as it relates to defense attorneys, juries, judges. I have to keep them from immediately deciding against me or my client. And what that requires sometimes is compromise. So I may not walk away with everything I want. My client may not walk away with everything that they want. But at the end of the day, I always tell my client, is it something that you can live with? And if it's something you can live with, then we have to take that win. Instead of just saying, you know, it's my way or the highway. And I think that that's what I would do, and I would treat it like that. I have to go to mediations. You have to go to arbitrations. I have to convince a jury. And like I said, it's not always, and we'd be fooling ourselves if we said that we're going to get everything. You know, there's not going to be this wish list that we're going to get. It's just not going to happen. We're going to have to compromise. As it relates to the Democratic Party, I think that we've been steadfast in our goals. We have not been that willing to compromise. It's either this way or no way. And the no way is not getting us anywhere. And that's why I do believe that we need new leadership. We do need new innovative, strategic thoughts and ideas and plans. We need more community involvement. We need more advocacy. We don't need career politicians.
I wish.
Yeah, career politicians that have just been up there and they have gotten comfortable. We need new solutions. And so that's how I would just answer that question.
By the way, career politicians make about $600,000 a year after they leave Congress becoming lobbyists. I've never even wanted to do that work, much less accepted it. In that regard, I think I've proven my bona fides. But to answer your question, when the Republicans were in charge, my last 4 years in Congress, I passed twice as many laws as any Republican in Congress. Twice as many as anyone else, and 3 times as many as any other Democrat. Let me explain to you how that works. I mentioned to you about my last day in Congress, okay? What I did is I went to the chairman of the committee who was in control of the bill that was moving on my last day, a Florida Republican, by the way, and I said to him, there's a few things I'd like to see in this bill. He said, what do you got? I laid out the 5 things for him. He said, that's pretty good. I like those ideas. You got any paper on that? So I took them out of my breast pocket, handed it to him, and they were in the law 2 hours later. Okay? That is how that's done. Now, with regard to your profound question of how we can get the Democratic Party up off the floor, the answer actually is with all of you. Okay? The answer is vote. We have more unregistered Democrats in Florida than we have registered Democrats in Florida. We have the lowest voter registration in the entire country now. And you know who it is? It's the ones who've been pushed off the voter registration rolls by the Republicans. It's the Democrats. If we registered even half of the 4 million unregistered Democrats in the state, we'd win every election. We'd win every election by 15 points. So that's the answer. Now, who's going to do that? Me. I'll do it. That's what I did when I was in Congress. You know, you have to give people ballots, you have to get them registered, and then you have to give them mail ballots so that it's easy to vote. At one time, 1/4 of all the Democrats in this entire state At that time, 25 congressional districts, 1/4 of the Democrats in the entire state of mail ballots was in my district. Because I made that happen. Because I had people knock on every Democratic door 3 times in one election and say, would you like to sign up for a mail ballot? Okay? That's how you do that. So there is a bright future for all of us. And that bright future consists of people who believe in common sense, who believe in the common good, who believe that the greatest good for the greatest number is what the government should be doing for people and not favors for special interests and billionaires. That's the answer. The answer is us, and the answer is you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for the information and insight that you've shared this evening. My question is around affordable housing. We talked about PITI, that's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, but all that is driven by the cost of homes. So what's the plan to actually address the root cause of the price of homes?
So the plan to address the root price of the cost of home, it still goes into the materials, how much the developers are going to be charging, how much the subcontractors are charging. And so that's why I know I'm a big incentivized person, and I've said that a lot, and because I think that that's the only way you can get people to act. I think if you just want them to act out of the kindness of their hearts, it's not going to happen. So I think that we need to lower or make materials more affordable. We need to make the property where the homes are being built more affordable. We need to make sure that we have adequate infrastructure that's already in place, because if they have to put in more roads, more the sewers, everything like that, that's also going to go into the cost of the house. So we have to look at the feasibility before we just put a house somewhere as to if where we place that house, where we place that subdivision in that development, is it feasible for affordable housing? You can't just put, a house anywhere without taking into consideration the infrastructure, the roads, if a bridge is required, the communication that's there, with the internet, things of that nature. So we have to actually look into what's going on into that subdivision to make those houses affordable. And that's where I would start. Because, you have to build a house, but you can't just plop one down anywhere. You have to take into consideration everything it takes to build that house and to build those subdivisions to make them affordable. Thank you.
Okay, going directly to your question, there's PITI. I'm in favor of lowering I, T, and I. I don't think we need to lower the price of homes that people already own. All right, you think about that a little bit. If we lower the price of homes that are already owned, then what we're doing is taking money out of people's pockets. 90% of the people in America, their largest single asset is their home and the equity they have in the home, meaning the difference between what they own and what they owe. So we can't do anything that would lower the value of homes. That would be a disaster. The actual way that people become economically free in this country, the way that we liberate ourselves if we're regular, normal people and not Elon Musk, the way that that happens is that you pay off your mortgage and you own where you live. And at that point, you just owe your taxes and your insurance each year. That's all you owe. And then you eventually qualify for Social Security, and suddenly you can pay all those bills. So I would never do anything that would lower the value of people's homes. What I would do is to lower their interest rates. And by the way, there is a program to do that that's 2% below the average interest rate. It's run by the state. There's only 13,000 people who got those subsidized mortgages last year. There should have been, 130,000 or maybe 1.3 million or maybe 13 million instead of 13,000 for the whole state. That would lower interest rates. I already told you what I'd do to lower taxes. I already told you what I'd do to lower insurance. So that's how I analyze this problem. And to people who pay off their mortgage and they're free at last, free at last, free at last, God in heaven, you're free at last.
We have 2 more questions, I believe. And still, we're going to ask if our respondents could limit their response to two minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My question's about OCPS education. OCPS expects to lose more than 3,100 students, which is nearly $28 million in funding. That'll affect over 800 teachers next school year. Now, when I moved here when I came back 12 years ago, Step Up was a program for mid to low income parents who had children with either special needs or needed them to be moved to some type of private education. In the recent years, Step Up has been changed, and everyone now has access to it, and it's pulling on our tax dollars. My question is, how can we stop the bleed? I am a teacher, and parents have now gotten hip to the game because not only is there Step Up, but there are other tax incentives to keep your kids home, such as the FTC, Florida tax credit, the family empowerment scholarships, in addition to the ones that we need, like disabilities and things like that for kids who have severe disabilities. It's crazy. We now get parents who bring kids in for a month or two, try to get them in the system so that they can take them out again to qualify. These kids are not being taught at home. They're not being able to write, read, and it's going to trickle into our society, but it's affecting the teachers' livelihoods, our homes. Is there a solution? Do you have a solution for this kind of a growing epidemic?
Yes. The solution is to support our public schools. Again, crazy, ideology-driven Republicans in Tallahassee have taken it in their heads that they need to undermine public schools because they believe that a lot of teachers are Democrats. Of all the crazy reasons. You know, I can't tell you I can't tell you enough the love that my mother put into being a kindergarten teacher for 30 years. All of her children agree that everything they needed to know in life they learned in kindergarten. And that's something that the children whom you're describing lose. They lose it. We decided 250 years ago that it was a common responsibility that we educate our children so that they can join the next generation with something going for them. And one of the beautiful things about public school these days is that they're not factory schools. There is an effort, the way that you describe, to look at a child and say, what is it about this child that's special? Because the things that make us different are actually the things that make us special. So what the schools have done is they've moved away from teaching everybody the same thing. Public schools. They moved away from teaching everybody the same thing. And instead what they do is they say, what are the interests of this child? What are the talents of this child? This is why we have electives. Okay? What are the limitations of this child that we might try to overcome? And that's what someone outside the public school system misses out on. Because there's too much of an opportunity to just indoctrinate them, to make them into something they're not, rather than to look at what they are and cherish it, make it grow.
While I recognize it's a problem, I'm going to be honest, I don't have enough information to be able to adequately answer your question. But what I would do is I would like to sit down with teachers like yourself who are much more knowledgeable than I and come up with solutions. That's one of the things that I plan to do when I'm in office, is sit down with a community that's affected by a particular law, particular legislation, and let's find workable solutions. I would love to hear, because you're in this day in and day out, you know how people, you just said they're gaming the system. We don't know how they're doing that, but you do, because it's something you see every day. So I'm sure if we sat down together, we could come up with a solution to help stop them from gaming the system, or at least make it a lot harder. And that's what I would do in order to help solve those problems, is to sit down and talk to people who are experiencing those problems. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have one more question from the audience.
Thank you. Well, my question is surrounded with health, property value, and homes. In 1970, they built government subsidized homes maybe 6 miles away from here. And these people paid for their homes in the most strenuous way, picking fruit, working in nurseries, working out on the muck. And my question is that people have passed away in this particular neighborhood here from different cancer clusters, different respiratory failure, low birth weight with kids born still. So the environment around this neighborhood, we have representation in the county, but the county seems to want to just pick up paper. We have in the city, the ones that run these dumps, they just want to push it off. They have brung down the people property value. People are passing away. In the last 10 years, maybe 150 people have died in this one community. What would you do in Tallahassee to come down in this neighborhood and in the surrounding areas with some kind of health study and to make these people whole?
That's what I was just going to suggest, that there needs to be some type of health study to see what's causing that, what's in the environment, if it's in the soil, if it's in the drinking water, what's causing those people to get sicker at such a higher rate. Oh, I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to go next, but what's causing the people to get sicker at such a higher rate? And then whatever, if it's attributable to someone or something, they need to be held accountable. There's no reason for you to do that. You know, you look back at like the Fort Meade and all the other litigation, and it's years later, but they figure it out. So it can be done because it happens all the time. And so what I would say is when we're talking about giving resources back to Orange County, that's part of the resources. We need to find out why our residents are getting sick. And when we talk about working across the board in Tallahassee with Republicans and MPAs, we also need to work across the board here locally. We need to get with our county and city commissioners. We need to find out, if you're saying that they're just pushing paper, why? They need to be held accountable too. Everybody needs to be held accountable. There's no passes. And if we're legislators, we work for the people. That's for all elected officials. We all work for people. And so we need to hold people accountable, but we got to figure it out first. We have to figure out what's causing them to be sick. And then we need to fix that problem, and then we need to make those responsible pay for it.
I want to make sure I understand your question. Could you come back to the mic? Thanks. I appreciate it. Is your question primarily about health, or is your question about housing, the fact that the community's been run down and it's become basically an eyesore and a nuisance for the whole area? Which one of those?
No, it's not. What it is, the houses was there.
Yeah.
The county, the state allowed 3 dumps to come in, medical waste, and Apopka have a water treatment sewer plant that came into this housing development with 30,000 government subsidized home for people that was picking oranges, working on the muck, to give them a community to live in, to strive in. But all this pollutant come in, and the environment just went to Hades. And we have representation, but the representation don't seem to want to do anything but campaign. And but we won't get there. But what my main concern is to get a resource for the dump, well, the muck. When the muck, with the pesticides hit the muck and they closed the muck down, what the state and the county did, they give money to go out and study the ecosystem to see what the pesticide did to the ecosystem. But they're taking all this pesticide along with benzene in these dumps, and it's in this community, but they won't do a health study on the people to see what the effects on the resident. And my question is, what would you do when you get to Tallahassee, or Ms. Smith get to Tallahassee? What would your priority to be for this community in trying to make it whole and make sure that it's healthy and can thrive again?
Okay, so thank you. I understand the question better now. Thank you for that. I want to point out that I have a record on this, and I think the record is one of the best of any elected official. We had two major health environmental crises when I was in Congress, and I got both of them fixed. The first one that we had was on the southeast side of town, where there was unexploded ordnance, unexploded bombs left behind by the military. And I insisted that the military come back and take their bombs away from them. We had a huge program where they were sifting through the soil to make sure that that was the case, because we didn't want a 5-year-old setting off a bomb in southeast Orlando. I took care of that. Second, because functionally the congressman for Orlando has to also be the congressman for Puerto Rico, since Puerto Rico has no representation as members of Congress. Same problem arose in Vieques, where they had dropped radioactive material all around the town. I got it fixed. I did that through being a member on the science committee and bringing in the people who had left this radioactive debris all around town and got it fixed. I chartered a study that showed that the cancer rate in Vieques was 6 times the cancer rate from people living 5 miles away. And I shamed the military into coming back and cleaning up their stuff. So you know I care, and you know I'm going to take care of that. When John Lewis recorded an endorsement video, one thing he said about me that I cherish is he said, Alan Grayson's someone who cares about clean water, clean air, the air we breathe, the food we eat. And I do, because I eat it too. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank the audience members for asking such wonderful questions. Thank you all very much. Now let's move on to our closing statement. Candidate Allen, if you could please give us your closing statement, and we do ask that you please keep it to 2 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so what this is all about in the end is what's best for you. What's best for you, what's best for you, what's best for you. And we have here a complete, total collapse of the political class in doing its job here in Orlando and around the state, large parts of the country. They don't give a damn about you. Now, the one thing you can be sure of, based upon my 6 years in Congress, is good stuff's going to get done if I'm in public office. Good stuff's going to get done. Good stuff for you. Don't give away your vote. Get something in return for that. It's a better life for you, better life for the people you love, better life for your family, better life for your neighborhood. That's what you ought to get in return for your vote. I'm not asking you to support Alan Grayson. I'm asking you to support yourselves by voting for Alan Grayson and voting for a better life for everybody, especially you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You may stay seated.
Thank you. Candidate Coretta.
I have something that something that just came to my head. Let's be done. Let's be done with the current leadership that we have. It's time for new leadership and new voices with new solutions that adequately represent our community. It's time for leaders that sit down with our community, that listen, that want to actually do something. Not just talk, not just rhetoric, but actual solutions. And that person's me. I've been a trial lawyer for 26 years. I've been fighting for people for 24 of those years. Sometimes people tell me I need to be a little bit softer. I need to smile more. And I'm really trying, but these are some serious issues, you all. And it's hard to sit up here with a smile on your face and you hear about the issues that are plaguing our community. It's hard to sit up here with a smile on your face when we have people in office who are doing nothing. It's hard to sit up here with a smile on your face when you have candidates who don't even show up so that you all can see how we would react in Tallahassee, how we would come to the table and represent the community once we get there. It's real easy to sit back and just have a one-on-one conversation with someone and just give them your ideas. But what about being challenged? What about when you have members of the audience asking, what's your solution? How are you going to fix this? If they can't show up here, how do you know they're going to show up in Tallahassee? And so what I would say is vote for people who are here. Vote for people who are showing up today. Vote for people who are asking and who are responding to the hard questions. That person is me, because every time you invite me to a debate, unless I have court, I'm going to show up. And I'm going to show up for you in Tallahassee. So please vote Coretta Anthony Smith on June 24th of 2025. Thank you.
Let's give another applause to both of our candidates, Alan Grayson and Coretta Anthony Smith. It's been a pleasure. You guys have really been a blessing. It's very informative. This young gentleman here is Richard Smith, Sean Smith's father, and we're kind of closing out this part. We'd like to thank you all, too, for coming out on such a quick response. So we're glad that you came out, because these issues are important to all of us. We live here, we work here, we play here, we raise our families, so it's important to hear what's happening in our community. So we're glad that you came and showed up as well. So, Richard, you have some parting words.
Yeah. Once again to Coretta Anthony Smith and Alan Grayson. By the way, my name is Anthony Smith. I thought, wow. Wow, yeah. Thank you. We know you could have been someplace else tonight, but you chose to be here. You showed up, and I want to thank you. I want to thank our host also. And I want to thank you for coming out. I listened to the questions that some of you asked when you came up here. Intelligent, insightful, concerned questions. Thank you. Now, what I want to remind you is that early voting begins this Sunday. When does it begin? The election is June. Saturday. Okay. The election is June 24. When is the election? Please remember that. And I do hope you show up to the polls and vote. Again, your questions were excellent. It showed that you were paying attention. And the information that were given by these two candidates, excellent information. So once again, thank you for your presence.
I would like to thank our sponsors, Gigi Morgan of Raise Your Glass. She's been getting the word out. And other entities, there's also Patmos Chapel at the Well right here, sponsored Joy Broadcasting Network, and Florida News Network, Florida National News, correct? So all the sponsors and everyone who's been involved to help get the word out. You online, we appreciate that. Next time we'll have we'll take your questions. So, Ron Brise, is there anything? Elder Sean Smith, I'm going to call you in to give us a prayer, because this is a chapel, and I like to call my brother up for prayer.
Keep Be quick. Thank you so much for attending. Dear Lord, we thank you for your presence. We ask that you give us wisdom in the decisions that we need to make moving forward. Amen. Consider yourselves dismissed.